Hey, welcome to That Sounds Gay. I'm in. I'm Seth.
And I'm Matt.
So, this is our third and final week of an introduction to gay media. Our first week, we did a little introduction to movies, music, television series, and then in week two, we talked about some social media influences along with print, be both news, novelizations, and including a specific somebody's partner's book series that just came out. Now, today we're going to be talking about everything and nothing at the same time. We're going to be talking about the themes that are present in all of the forms of media. So, while we're not going to be talking about any exact form of media, we're going to be talking about all of them. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. Okay, and welcome to That Sounds Gay. I'm in. So, like we mentioned, we're going to be talking about representation, and we're going to kick everything off with some, obvious representation, stuff that you see right there on the screen. So, what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I just want to start with a more recent series just because I've watched it. The Last of Us, which was on HBO just a couple of years ago. That was a series that came out with a couple of a gay couple that they weren't in the forefront of the show, but they had a pretty big part of the show.
They are instrumental to the storyline, yes. They
Yes.
definitely help out a lot. Fun fact, that is not how their story goes. So, if you
Really?
go, so you watch the TV show,
Right, I
and
watched the TV show, but I have not played the video game, or is that's from a video game, is that correct?
yes, I have played the video game and watched the TV show. They are not happy. They are not a good couple. They are
Yeah.
tired. Like, one of them killed the other one. Like,
Wow.
you kind of have to piece everything together as you're going through that area. They are a gay couple, and they are like they kept all that part the same, but they like Disneyfied the hell out of that section. They
Yeah.
took that and made it so happy-go-lucky because they took something that, which, I mean, we love this, but they took something that was so full of hatred and, like, they hated each other and turned it
Mhm.
into a love story.
Well, I'm glad that they turned it into a love story, though. It was such a sweet story. I love the representation that was in that. I loved how they changed that tidbit to make it into a love story. It was a great love story, and you kind of gave me a little tidbit into season 2. Can you share the little tidbit into season 2 for the video game?
Spoilers. So many spoilers. So if you actually don't want to know what happens in season 2 of The Last of Us, I only know this because I have played the video game. There was The Last of Us Part 1, which is pretty much a one-for-one shot of what happens in The Last of Us Season 1, which leads us to believe that Last of Us Season 2 is going to be a one-for-one shot of The Last of Us Part 2, which means that Ellie's a lesbian. So
See, I mean,
there's
we don't know what's going to happen in season 2, but this is very interesting to know that as she grows up, we get to see a little bit of her future. I think that that's very,
well, they
exciting.
first bring it up so there's the first game, which is The Last of Us, of course, and then they have a DLC that was kind of its own game called Left Behind.
Wait. I'm old. What's DLC mean?
DLC means download. It's basically an additional section of the game. It's downloadable content, is what the letters
Downloadable.
mean,
Okay.
but
Thank
it's
you.
like an add-on.
Add on.
So,
Okay.
where it's in more of the story, and so in that they actually introduce Ellie as being bisexual, and then they progress on into The Last of Us Part 2, where she has a girlfriend. It's a committed relation. Like, it's a whole thing.
Okay. So Ellie is bisexual. That's very interesting. I love that.
And of
So,
course, the show itself was picked up and made by HBO Max, who was the very first people to do. I say HBO Max, but back then it was just HBO. Like, they were very, like, they had Queer as Folk. They had like a whole bunch of LGBT content on their platform before it became like popularized on other platforms. So I feel like it's pretty likely we're going to get an actual true representation of The Last of Us.
I think that's great. HBO, I mean, HBO used to have Real Sex, which was, I mean, it was a very informative show that actually showed, being able to learn about sex in a very open, talkative, straightforward, communicative way. HBO was able to show that without the giggle factor. And people looked at that as like a real perverted kind of thing, but Real Sex was like a real informative, kind of educational, bringing kink and real. It was real sex. It was just bringing real, sex to real life. And HBO was able to bring that back in a time in early 2000s when these kind of things weren't talked about. HBO has always been able to bring things to the forefront. So love that for HBO.
And it's not even that long. Like, it feels like a long time for me because but like, I'm 32. Yeah. And I started whenever I was growing up, my uncle was really into like all of that stuff, like the Queer Folk, all of those shows. I was very familiar with it growing up. I didn't watch any of it because, it's got a lot of adult content in it and I was a kid at the time, but like I was aware. So it to me seems like a long time because it's been pretty much my whole life, but this stuff has not been around very long. It's only been around like 20 years at most. So, I mean, like there was stuff
Yeah.
before then, but it's only become like popularized recently.
Yeah, I mean, this is within my lifetime, and I'm barely, little over 10 years older than you. And, this was, since I was a teenager that we've been able to have things like this. I mean, when I was a teenager, there was a queer video game in Japan, and like we heard about it, but we couldn't get our hands on it. And this was so my partner and I recently looked for it on YouTube, and you could find it on YouTube now. I don't know what it's called, but now we've reached the age where you could find things from our past on YouTube, it was a really bizarre video game. You don't even want to, look it up anymore. But
Play
these kind,
video games on Steam. I promise you, I could show you some things that make your head spin. I've seen some things
this
on
thing
Steam.
had people's heads spinning. It was the most weird kind of, back then. I mean, things just went pew pew in video games. That's all they did. And they were very flat screen kind of video games. But these were the kind of representation we had. We had magazines and very Atari kind of games. We didn't have any kind of representation for queerness. Was just we were grasping at straws for representation. And now when we see it, it's very obvious. Representation is very great to see as somebody that's in their 40s.
Everything constantly has like not even that. Okay, so are you familiar with the Avatar series, the Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yes, I am actually.
So in their sequel series, The Legend of Korra, there are 4 seasons of the show. But if you reference it back to Nickelodeon, whenever they first aired the show, they had only aired 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is because in the 4th season, they reveal, like seasons 1 through 3, there is a strong connection between the main character, Korra, and another female lead named Asami. They both date the same person at a certain point in times. But they're very, very, very good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then season 4 comes around, and Avatar's always been known for tackling much deeper issues than most children's shows do. I mean, hell, the first
Mm-hmm.
entire series was just basically talking about war.
Right.
And it was such an intense topic for such a younger age group that they decided to tackle something else as well. And Korra and Asami started dating in season 4.
Mm-hmm.
This upset a lot of certain types of parents, and that ended up getting the show to not even be released for its 4th season unless you saw it online or bought the physical copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
The most extreme thing they did was they held hands.
Right.
That was the most extreme thing.
Right. And it's just the idea of the fact of two women, and I mean, and I watched, Avatar and the male and female characters and season 1, 2, and 3 had more of a crush on each other than that.
Oh yeah, no, like it,
Right. I mean, I've seen the men in that show without their shirts on. I mean, there's a lot of sexual tension in that show. So holding hands is the least of their worries. But
and
yeah,
like that's a show that's known for doing such big things that like
right.
you're
So
okay with them tackling things like war, but two girls holding each other's hands
right.
is
Definitely, but that's why representation it matters. I mean, because even small things like that cause such a ripple wave of resistance, and so people in our community were grasping for this kind of representation in our community, and that's why it's so important. And that's why we talk about how queer media is really important. Where's some other real obvious representation in our community in media?
I mean, the pretty obvious ones are ones that we were talking about in previous episodes. Like we had the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Will and Grace, the Queer as Folk, like the shows that kind of kickstarted everything. But now we have like Glee, which is a very LGBT positive TV series. We have what's that one show? It's really popular right now. Heart
Right.
that actually has one of the main characters also translates over to the Agatha All Along TV show, playing the main character Wiccan. Like he does such a great job in that. And the Heartstopper show is on Netflix, but like we've gotten to like there's this one horror movie that I love so much called They Slash Them. And it's all about
I
it's
like that name.
it's all about this conversion therapy camp that gets a slasher villain, and it goes very south in the weirdest ways that I could have possibly imagined. And that movie was so good.
A horror film. I love the idea of representation in a horror film. I love the idea of that. Getting across all genres. That's a great idea for queer media. We should be able to be seen in all genres, and so everybody, no matter what your taste in media, you can get that representation. I love that. They slash them. That is a wonderful idea. Whoever came up with that, they came up with the title before they came up with the idea. Um, I love that.
But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break. We'll come back and we'll talk about some less obvious stuff that kind of still show off representation in the LGBT community. So we'll
Sounds
be right
good.
back after you listen to some sponsors from, well, us.
Sounds good.
Mpox symptoms can appear as fever, chills, rash, and swollen lymph nodes. If you notice any of these signs, get tested right away. Early detection is key. Stay informed, stay safe. For more information, please visit your primary physician. And welcome back. Now that we've just gotten done talking to you about some diseases for a few minutes, why don't we go ahead and talk about some subliminal representation?
Yeah. So, one of my favorites, I think it's because I have a little bit of corrections officer, was the Sherlock Holmes and the Watson. So I love the detective, the true crime stuff, but their relationship was so like, I don't know, their emotional connection, the bromance. It's just, and then they came out with the movies. I loved the books growing up, and then they came out with the movies, and the connection. The
I mean,
bromance.
he's even married.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You could just feel it. You could feel it in their connection. I guess as a young gay kid growing up, I read those books. The subliminal connection between those two. I just always felt it. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
I didn't know about this until I was researching this episode. Apparently, so as you've definitely noticed by talking about this media series with me, I love horror content. It's amazing.
No way.
I have a ghost face right here.
Yeah, I had no idea.
So apparently, Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 specifically was a gay movie. And I hadn't seen them. Well, I've seen it, but it's been such a long time, and I never really My favorites are the first one and Dream Warriors, which is number 4. So I love those movies. They're fantastic, but I never really watched 2 all that often. So whenever I heard that, I was just like, there's not a single gay character in this movie. What do you mean? So I went back through and I watched it. And first of all, I was corrected. There is a gay character. The coach is a gay guy. Not a nice gay guy. Like, he is very predatory. Like, very predatory. But
No.
watching the movie, first of all of the other movies, Freddy Krueger is a dream demon that is capable of killing people in their sleep. Like, in dramatic ways, too. Like, he cuts Johnny Depp open in his sleep and blood starts pouring everywhere in the room. And, like, it's an actual, like, bloodbath whenever the parents walk in there, even though Freddy Krueger never went into the room. But for some reason, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he needed to have the main character kill for him, but conveniently only killed people that were, like, bizarrely homoerotic towards him. Like, the way that the coach acts, which, first of all, the coach is even mentioned at going to, like, BDSM sex clubs, and said that they said that the coach was a gay guy that would, like, frequent BDSM sex clubs. And it started off like that was just a passing note, and then it was like he was so aggressive towards the main guy that, and then whenever it finally came down to, like, killing him, it got, like, weirdly sexual. Like, the coach was in all leather and was strung up in, like, a very suggestive pose.
Maybe I should watch this movie.
And had all of his clothes ripped off of him and then started spanking him with a towel. And it was just what? And, like, the
Not
way
a
that
normal Freddy Krueger movie.
not in the slightest. And it was, after learning about it, I guess the movie was supposed to be a concept of homophobic and ended up being homoerotic because the main character that they cast was an actual gay guy. Like, the actor himself was a gay guy, so that being portrayed made everything seem very homoerotic, because the Freddy Krueger was supposed to be the fear of coming out, the fear of and Krueger would possess the guy to have him kill the people that he was sexually attracted to, repressing your feelings, being out of control, stuff like that. And it was supposed to be one giant metaphor for being afraid of being gay, basically. And it ended up still basically being like that, just different.
So kind of like taking back the queer terms, like queer, like queer was used, negatively, and now I use queer as, a positive term.
I mean, queer always has meant weird.
Right. But now I use it positively, like, it's the name of our community, or like, that sounds gay. And now it's named our podcast, so like, Freddy Krueger 2 was, supposed to be against the gay community, and now the gay community owns it as one of our films.
So this one I still don't entirely understand, and if somebody has any explanation for me, because I've read explanations about it, it just doesn't make sense to me. Another horror movie called The Babadook, and for some reason that's a very gay movie, and I don't understand why. But everything, of course, being subliminal makes it to where it's open for interpretation. You can, like, it's not even always so obvious. Like, let's take the character Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Ursula was entirely based off of a drag queen. And Ursula's design, like, Ursula herself is not a drag queen, is a very just villain character, but the visuals of everything was that of one of an extremely popular drag queen. I want to say her name was Desire.
I'm not exactly sure, but Ursula is my type of woman, and if you are out there, I am seeking. But that is the only type of woman I'm seeking.
I also would like to point out that I was partially right. It's not Desire, it's Divine. Ursula is based off of the drag queen Divine.
Okay, so Divine, if you are single, I'm looking. So I'm just saying, I've always been attracted to Ursula. Ursula is just like the most beautiful woman out there. The Little Mermaid was the first movie I seen in theater at age 6, and I have just been attracted to Ursula ever since. So yeah, Ursula, gay, eye contact through and through. Always been, I've always been as flamboyant as Ursula, though. Totally. I think that's where I got my personality was from Ursula. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Which, really quickly, yeah, I looked into it and I see.
yeah, definitely. I definitely see it. Yeah, yeah.
So the
So she's
downside is
beautiful.
that Divine is not going to be reaching out to you.
Oh,
Unfortunately, they did pass away a few years ago.
oh, that's
By
too
a few years ago,
bad.
it does seem like they were not actually that old. They were born in 1945 and died in 1988. They were only, I did make me do math, 42. They were
You're only
42.
42. That is younger than me. May they rest in peace. They were beautiful, absolutely stunning. Still my kind of woman. So if you do,
Which also means that they never even got a chance to see the Ursula design because the movie came
those,
out in 1989.
1 year later. I said, I was my first movie. I was 8 years old. My heart, my heart.
But
But anyway, representation in our media really matters. So, like when we're moving forward in media, we want to. One of the things that I want to point out that as an activist that we want to say that matters is as queer people, we don't want to just be looked at as somebody that's over the top or something that's subliminal or something that's just so obvious. And sometimes we just want to be. I guess it is kind of subliminal. Sometimes we do want to just be the corner shop owner, in the story, and
sometimes that's even good representation because
yeah,
while Spider-Man 2, the video game that just came out, it's a very heterosexual character, very, very, everything is very heterosexual about it, but whenever you're swinging through the video or through the city, you end up coming across the street that is just lined with pride flags.
right,
It's not taking anything from the game, it's not adding anything to the game, but it's adding well, it is adding something. It's adding
yeah.
representation, and it's just Miles Morales may not be a queer character, but there's still the representation in the
It's
background.
showing you that queer life exists in the real world, and that's the kind of representation we want. We don't want it just always just obviously out in the forefront. We don't want it so subliminal that it's only seen by the queer community. We want it in the everyday life, and that's the kind of theme of queer representation we want. We want it, as sometimes the main character and sometimes the main character's best friend. Sometimes the character's boss. We just want it in everyday's life.
When not just always the villain like has been stereotypically happening.
Right. We don't want to, always Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, come on. I mean, that's like an amazing character, but we don't always want to be the bad guy. We don't, we want to be everyday life because, that's where we are is, that's what we want kids to see. And, sometimes we want to be president. Sometimes we want to, be Secretary of State. We want to be
Sometimes we want to be
seen.
the laundry person.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes we want to be the pizza delivery guy. I delivered pizza for a while. Let me see myself in media. I don't want to just be the guy on screen that's getting injured because, they're who they are or I'm being discriminated against. I want to, I want to be seen as just a regular human being.
But with all that being said, this actually feels like a pretty good place to wrap up everything. I hope you guys have enjoyed the whole queer media that we've been talking about. And if you guys like this, Matt and I would be more than happy to dive much deeper into this. Maybe we could do a whole 3-episode series of just queer movies. Have like a big thing where we talk about different ones each week. So if this is something you guys like, please let us know. Comment section as usual. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. You guys do this all the time. So, but don't forget, everything's in our description section, including sources, information about our Discord and social media, and an email account in case you would like to reach out to either of us.
Yeah,
That being
thank you
said,
so much.
see you guys later. See you guys next year. Okay, I'm ending the studio because of the weird glitch that I'm having.
Okay, sounds good.